I've been coming to Copco Lake since the early 70s as a child, and then eventually my parents would always rent cabins up here. And eventually they bought their own property and built a house, and they lived here for, I think, almost 20 years before they finally had to move. Dad passed away in 2020 at the age of 93. And my mom lives up near my sister. She's 90. So living at Copco just wasn't a reality for them anymore for obvious reasons. They just weren't mobile enough, and they needed to be closer to services. So I'm up here trying to revitalize their house, trying to rescue it from its state of disrepair. And it just brings back really great memories to be up here, seeing seeing the rim rock around the lake, and it's changed a lot, but in many ways it hasn't changed at all. And it really brings back a lot of really pleasant memories. It's unfortunate that there's plans now to tear out the dams and to try to turn this back into a river. I understand why people may want to do that, but the way that the lake is and the community around the lake, it doesn't really make any sense to do that. And I read things about, or I've heard about, the toxic algae blooms that we get in the lake. I don't believe they're toxic. The algae comes from, I think, probably from Upper Klamath Lake in Oregon. And I think that there's people up there who actually harvest that algae and sell it to vitamin companies who are making vitamins out of it. So obviously there's some purification process that takes place, but it's hardly toxic. I've been eating fish out of this lake since I was 7 years old, and we never had any kind of strange illnesses or anything as a result of eating the yellow perch or the trout that we got out of the Klamath River here and the lake itself. Regarding the salmon and the issue of we need to get salmon back up in the area in the upper part of the Klamath River. I remember as a young child, my dad was friends with Eb Alber, who was the original owner of the Copco Lake store, and he took us up the river to do some trout fishing one time, some fly fishing. And on the way up there, we were talking about, my dad was asking about, would they ever consider building a salmon ladder so that the salmon could get back up here? And Ed kind of laughed about that and says, well, there was never salmon up here. And my dad was kind of puzzled at that because he thought, it was probably the brochure that he read. It said that there was silver salmon. The fine print probably didn't tell him, and he has to go down beyond Iron Gate in order to fish for those silver salmon. But Eb told us, there was two major factors that kept the salmon from being up here. Number one was where the dam is now used to be a huge rock waterfall, and that was Ward's Canyon, and that was where the fish just physically would not be able to make it past that. That geographical feature made it the obvious place to put a dam. It's very narrow there, and it would take a minimal amount of construction, and it was a already somewhat of an impediment, but it was a huge waterfall there. So he said, number one, the fish couldn't get past her. He goes, number two, there's a lot of geothermal activity up in the Klamath Falls area where the Klamath River is fed from. And all of that water is from the area that's kind of the slopes of Crater Lake. And Crater Lake, as you know, is an ancient but extinct volcano crater. And so there's a lot of geothermal activity up there. And so the water is really, really warm, and it's too warm for salmon. As it goes downstream and you have all these little creeks feeding in that are cooler, the colder water, it makes it conducive to salmon further downriver. But So that's a story from about, I'm going to guess, 1975. And so even as far back as then, uh, the locals here and the people who knew the history of the area were already saying there's never going to be salmon up here. Even if you built a fish ladder, there would never be any salmon in the upper part of the Klamath River. So again, if you understand why people want to do what they want to do, but they need to be honest about why they're doing it. And the salmon issue is just really not an issue. If there's other issues, bring those to the forefront, and you can have your debate about the validity of those arguments. But don't throw this ridiculous salmon argument in there as kind of a ruse to try to make this happen. You got to be honest and forthright and have a legitimate debate, and then you can decide what's best for the area. But those are just my views as somebody who's been coming here for almost 50 years and enjoying this place. Obviously, I'd like it to stay the same. So that's about it.